Hi there! So this is going to be my interface tutorial for Hearts of Iron 4. So assuming you have loaded up the game for the first time, you have absolutely no idea what's going on, this is the video for you. So we are starting right here on the main menu. I have no DLCs, no mods, this is completely vanilla. This is what you're going to see when you turn the game on for the first time. There's a bunch of things in here. There is an options menu for like what's it called? I've turned the volume way down for the sake of this video, but I'm gonna go single player. I'm gonna hit new game, and I get two options here. One is starting the game in 1936, which lets you build up a bit more. The other, which is starting the game in 1939, if you want to just go straight to the World War. Personally, I recommend 1936 because it gives you more time to kind of learn the game and build up a little bit. So I'm going to hit select scenario, and this is my select country roulette. So all of these countries at the top, these are the major countries. These are the ones who have the big army, the big navy, the big air force, and are generally the ones who are going to be doing the ass kicking in this game. Alternatively, I can click other countries here, and this will let me click on basically any country. Obviously, because we're not running obviously because we're not running with any DLC, things might look a bit barren. So if you've bought, say, the Death or Dishonor DLC, you might see that Romania and Yugoslavia might have a few more options. Or if you've bought Waking the Tiger, China might look slightly differently. But right now we are running with no DLCs, which is totally fine. So we can click on one of these countries to kind of do something about it. But for the sake of this game, I am going to be playing as a secondary power. So I could play as one of these major powers. So I could play as France, I could play as the UK, I could even play as Germany and basically decide the way the war's going to go. However, I don't want to overwhelm you in that way. Instead, I'm going to be playing, at least for your First Nation, I'd recommend playing a country that does not necessarily get involved in the war, unless you can choose it. So for instance, if you play France, you're basically guaranteed to get invaded at some point or another. If you're playing and you want World War II to happen historically, if you paid attention in history class, you know that Germany is going to be basically invading every country in Europe. So if you play a country in Europe, you're probably going to get invaded by the Germans. And that can be very disorienting if you don't know what you're doing. As a result, for your First Nation, I would suggest playing a country that is not going to get involved in the war, unless you decide to get involved. So for instance, Turkey. Turkey is a country, it has a fairly sizable manpower pool, it's geographically fairly close to Europe, but Turkey does not generally get invaded unless they themselves decide to get involved in the war. Or like Mexico or Brazil. Brazil, super powerful country, Brazil will generally not get involved in the war unless you involve yourselves in the war. So actually, yeah, let's use Brazil as an example. So for our game, we are going to be playing a game as Brazil. There is a difficulty slider down here of how difficult you want the game to be. Iron Man mode is basically, if you turn this on, you're not allowed to cheat, you're not allowed to save scum. Personally, I like playing with Iron Man, up to you. And historical AI focuses, if this box is checked, basically this means World War II is going to happen pretty much the same way it did historically. If you want wacky nonsense, I'd recommend keeping this off. But if you don't know what you're doing, and if it's just you want the predictability, I'd suggest keeping it on. So for right now, because I don't want to overwhelm you with like crazy communist Brazil takes over South America, I think we'll leave this on for the time being. And so I'm going to hit the start button. Because we are playing, so let's not play an Iron Man right yet. So we don't need to worry about that stuff. So that means if we screw up, we can like save and load and all that jazz. And alright, we have now loaded into the game as Brazil. So again, we are not playing any specific person, we are literally the nation of Brazil as a whole. And there's a whole lot to unpack here immediately. So first things first, let's look at the UI. So we have the Brazilian flag, we have a whole bunch of little decisions, we have a whole bunch of little buttons here, generals, armies, all this jazz. First things first, whenever you start a Hearts of Iron 4 game, the first thing I'd recommend taking care of is all these little notifications here at the top. All of these notifications are generally things that you need to be in your attention. So the first one of these is research slot. So if I click the research slot, you'll see we have 2 research slots available. So this allows us to research 2 different technologies at the same time. So if I click here, this will open up the technology tree. So I can research guns, motorized, marines, different types of tanks, different types of ships, planes, all that jazz. I have 2 research slots right now, meaning I can research 2 different types of technology at the same time. Some countries might only have a single research slot. Some might have even 5 or 6. It really depends on, well, how smart your nation is, as it were. And obviously there are ways to get more research slots. So right now, as Brazil, I think I'm going to be starting in the industrial tree. All these little tabs up here, these are all the different windows of research. Actually, no, let me explain what these are. So we have infantry stuff, so this is guns and trucks. We have support companies, which are things you can add on to your infantry brigades to make them better at stuff. Tanks, these are for your offense. Artillery, these are for shooting down planes, shooting down tanks, and shooting infantry. Your 4 different land doctrines, which is how you fight your wars. Different types of ships. Different naval doctrines, so how your ships work. Your air force, your air doctrines, which is how you want to be flying. Engineering, which is mostly computer and radars, but also fun techs like nuclear weapons. And industry, which is how best you can actually construct things. So as Brazil, we don't really have the biggest industry, so I think we're going to start investing our research slots in increasing industry, because we need to build ourselves up if we want to be fighting a heck of a lot in this war. And so every tech here has a year. So this tech is 1936, meaning we would not take any penalties to researching it. Compare that to, say, nuclear weapons. To even start nuclear weapons, it's like, it starts in 1940, so we're like 4 years out of date, meaning if we wanted to start researching nuclear weapons, it's going to take us forever. So instead, I think we're going to start on some 1936 technology. You can generally research things ahead of time. However, if you see what's called, for instance, improved machine tools is a year ahead of time, meaning it would take us basically half a year in order to research it. Though if it were 1936, that time would go down. So I would suggest not researching things too far ahead of time, or else you're going to end up with these like massive penalties. But as long as you're researching things within the same year or so, you'll probably be fine. So alright, so we are going to research some stuff. So I think we're going to research basic machine tools. So this is the wrench, and this will help us produce stuff better. If I hit research, it's now going to be researching for the next 121 days. For our second slot, I think we're going to be doing a lot of building. So let's research I-beams, basically. This will give us a 10% boost to construction speed. And I hit enter. We're now researching both of those things. And when one of these things is done researching, we'll get a little pop-up, and the game will be like, hey, research more stuff. Next thing to worry about is construction. So there are a whole bunch of things we can construct. So we could construct infrastructure, which is roads. This affects division speed. This affects supply. However, one of the other things it affects is if we build a bunch of infrastructure, you'll see we'll be extracting more resources from the ground. Infrastructure is great to build. There's also air bases, which is how you base your planes. Anti-air for like defense against bombers. But the main 3 things are civilian factories, military factories, and naval dockyards. Civilian factories produce all other things. So right now, again, Brazil, we don't have a huge amount of industry. We have like 18 civilian factories and like 3 military factories. So we could start building military factories immediately if we want to just produce a bunch of guns. However, I think the first thing we want to do is beef up our economy. So I'm going to be producing some civilian factories. This is entirely up to you. And obviously where you put the civilian factories mattered, and this is where infrastructure comes in. So the infrastructure around our capital here is really great. So if we built a factory in, say, here, we'd be getting a 50% bonus to construction because of the great infrastructure. When if we built a factory in the middle of the Amazon, you'll notice it'll take a heck of a lot longer. So I'm going to build some civilian factories down here near our capital where the infrastructure is good. So this tells me this factory will be done by the 14th of June 1936. Nice. So that is good. That is our construction taken care of. Next is military factories. So we have 3 military factories and 2 dockyards. The game has started us with producing some guns and support equipment, which is totally fine. We can have it produce other stuff, like some basic things like basic guns or interwar fighters, and as we research more technologies, we'll be able to build more things. Yeah, let's just make some guns right now. Guns sound useful. We also have some dockyards, which we can use to build ships. I think we'll start building some submarines. I want 2 factories building submarines. That's pretty good. Alright, production all sorted. Next is National Focus. Another way to access this is if you click on the flag here, there's a big button here that says National Focus. But this question mark button will also open the National Focus tree. So this is the National Focus tree. And this is basically how you can select which direction you want to go for your nation. So we could choose, so if I click on this, focuses will generally take 70 days, and they will do stuff. So if I click Naval Effort, after 70 days, I'd get a little bit of naval experience, which helps us customize our ships, and I'd get 3 free naval dockyards. Alternatively, I could do Political Effort, which gives us a bunch of political power, and unlocks us going like fascist or communist or neutrality focused. Or Army Effort, which gives us research bonuses. Or Aviation Effort, if we want a bonus for researching super fast fighters or something. Because we don't have a whole lot in the way of industry, again, I'm going to be focusing on industry, so I'm going to pick our focus as Industrial Effort. So if I click this, once I'm done researching this, I'll get a research bonus to be able to research industry stuff faster. So cool. Click that, and this will be done in 70 days. There are other focuses that are quicker, but generally focuses are around 70 days or so. And let me 1 second.